Alright, Wardah, let's take a look at your essay. So before we get started, I know we haven't done MLA format just yet, but I did make this double space so I can read your paper a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier for me to go through them. So overall, before I get to your hook in your thesis, let me talk about what's in the middle, because this is really good. So you define what mercy killing is, which is good because it's not in the hook right away. You talk about it, and it all flows okay, or pretty well actually. So you talk about what it is, how it's done, and what the problem is, which is a pretty good basic introduction to have. And what's particularly strong is this part right here. Even though sometimes saying things like there's a huge conflict or this is heavily debated, even though that's sometimes kind of not wishy-washy, but just kind of generic, that's the word I'm looking for. This part is really good. There's huge conflict over whether those people should deserve empathy from the courts or be prosecuted and convicted as murderers. This is really good because I think this is the crux of the argument surrounding mercy killing, so that's pretty good. And when it comes to your thesis, mercy killing is definitely not ethical. That is a pretty good thesis. The only reason that it is a little bit throwing me off a little bit is because you say the same thing as a hook. Oh, excuse me. So overall, I think the only thing you need in your introduction is a better hook, because you don't really want your hook to say right away, this is my position. Sometimes, depending on how the hook is, it'll kind of be implied that way. But the thing that's a little bit of a concern with yours, so let's read this. Although some may consider mercy killings ethical, they are not acceptable. So I see that this could be an attempt at countering a claim or making something shocking, but because you say some people think it's not, or some people think it's ethical, but it's not. That's not quite a hook. You want a different way to tie it in somehow, okay? So, moving on to your first body paragraph. So, I'm noticing a few grammar things, and I noticed one up here. Right here, you have a contraction here. You do not want to have any contractions in your paper. You need to make that cannot. And cannot is one word. I notice a lot of people are using, if they're not using contractions, they're using can space not, but it's actually one word. So your topic sentence is actually really interesting in this one. Protesting ends certain people's lives will not end suffering. I think that's a really strong topic sentence, actually, and I really, really like it. The only problem is you have grammar concern here. This needs to be possessive apostrophe S. And I think this all flows well. You have the other apostrophe S concern here. Let's see. No one's life is worthless, and they should not have to believe that just because their loved ones do not want to see them in pain, and sometimes it's not clear if an ill person really wants to die. This all flows really, really well. You have some really good ideas, and your writing on your own is pretty strong here, Wardah. The only thing that's missing are specific examples to bring out evidence from the articles in the text, because this all right here is actually some pretty good analysis. You're just missing those evidence components, because what I'm noticing so far in the first two paragraphs, you have some strong writing styles that is pretty good on your side, but the problem is, aside from what I talked about with the introduction, you don't have any evidence here. So you want to make sure that evidence drives your analysis and makes it a little bit easier for you, okay? So moving on, yep, okay, this is all one article. To your next body paragraph. Okay, with this body paragraph, there's a few fragments and transitional words I want you to consider that I'll get to in a second. Opposite of the first body paragraph, this has a lot of examples, but you don't have as much analysis. Really, the only analysis you have is this right here. Not all causes of mercy killing happens painlessly. Hold on a second. Okay, so I am actually going to use this. Let me see if the tool is here. There's this tool called Language Tool that will check some grammar, and I just want to check this one because it kind of caught me for a second. Oh, hold on. I did it wrong. Not all causes of mercy killing happens painlessly. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording for a second, then I will get right back and explain to you what I'm doing. Okay, so basically, I'm debating whether or not this needs to be happen or happens, but for the sake of time, I'm just gonna let this one slide because typically it's if you have a plural noun, you don't need the s, but if you have a singular noun, then you do need the s. So mercy killing happens, but because you have causes of mercy killing, I believe that acts as the noun that modifies the verb. So I think this is supposed to be happen, but not all cases of mercy killing happen painlessly, which whatever, we'll ignore it for now. But what I would suggest putting here is put a transitional word like however, not all causes of mercy killing happen painlessly, because that will connect your topic sentence into some analysis right here, excuse me. And then you have these examples here, which are pretty good. This is kind of a fragment right here. You need to add a little bit more context here. A lot of times I see a lot of you using phrases like this to connect your previous sentence, but to me and to your readers, that's just kind of how you would answer a question. What was the reason that she was shot? The reason being she had Alzheimer's disease. That's kind of how you answer it, but it's not quite in that sentence format. So this is technically a fragment right here, so be aware of that. But overall, this is some good analysis that I think can tie in with this painlessly portion right here, but you need to tweak it a little bit more, because if we look at, where is it, shooting her through the head, specify this a little bit more. I don't know if the article talked about it, but you can talk about those examples where people were killed and they were put through the pain of whatever it is, because the only reason I might challenge this a little bit is because in Mice and Men, the reason that George shoots Lenny in the back of the head is because it's actually a quick and painless way that it's just an instantaneous kill, so be aware of that. Alright, moving on to your next paragraph. Your topic sentence, other people believe that mercy killings are ethical. Yeah, what I would suggest doing for your opposition paragraph is not to just come right out and be like, other people disagree with this. Give a little bit of a hint as to why. And I see that with your next sentence right here. If you just combine this, other people believe that mercy killings are ethical because the right to die should be a matter of a personal choice. Add that conjunction, because, and this becomes such a much stronger topic sentence. And then right here, you need to capitalize Candy, and then you need the apostrophe S. I think the apostrophe S is the biggest grammar thing I'm noticing so far, is when you have those possessive words, you're not adding it, you're just kind of keeping it plural. Because the other ones I've talked about, your contractions and fragments, are only kind of here and there, but this is the most common one I'm seeing. And that's fine. Right here, this is a vague pronoun because you haven't referred to anyone in particular. Because you just said Carlson shot Candy's dog, are you referring to Carlson and Candy, or are you talking about just Carlson? Make this a little bit more specific. You could just say the men at the ranch claimed they were ending its suffering. Especially, and the reason that it's a little bit vague is because the actual person ending the suffering is Carlson, so that makes it a little bit awkward. And right here, you would need a transition word because you go from one topic of the dog into another one. So you would at least need to say, in addition, hospital disease, blah, blah, blah. And then all of this is good. The only problem with this paragraph is, again, you have the good writing, but you don't have any analysis in this one that supports your claim. So if you're going to talk about ending the suffering and how they think that this frees up funds and equipment, this is where you come in with your own evidence and analysis and say, well, you're wrong. So in the first paragraph, what I'm noticing is you don't have the evidence. Paragraph 2, you don't have the analysis. And then paragraph 3, you don't have the analysis for your side. Okay? In your conclusion, mercy killings are not ethical. Good, you are restating your thesis. You don't need to, it's fine. Typically for academic papers, you don't need to italicize words, but I understand a lot of you do that for emphasis, but it's fine. Everyone's life is valuable. let's see, you have another contraction. Well, actually, let's read this one out loud. In conclusion, mercy killing is not ethical. No one has the right to end a life other than God himself. Everyone's life is valuable. Just because they can't do the same amount of things as others, it does not mean that their life is worthless. Using the excuse that they don't want them to suffer is unacceptable. If the patient is truly loved, then they should live full lives. You know what? Leave it there. Get rid of this. Don't repeat your thesis. This is what you get your reader to really think about. If the patient is truly loved, then they should live full lives. Overall, I think you recap your body paragraphs pretty good. You talk about this throughout there. I would get rid of this. Your thesis is restated. You just have the contractions there. So now it's mostly your contractions and use of possessive words I'm noticing is the biggest grammatical concern. And this is pretty good. A lot of people are using the word just, but you used it correctly, so thank you for that. But overall, Wardah, your paper is pretty good. You just need to add some evidence and analysis sprinkled here and there. And hopefully you know what to do next.